I have to confess, I also liked when Dave stuck his hands in the mud this last Sunday, because I asked him to give me a shoulder massage when we got home later, and his hands were really soft. The best. So I'm like, do that regularly, please. Hi, everybody. I'm a thankful believer in Jesus Christ who continues to help me see myself for who I truly am, an imperfect person who struggles with and is finding victory in my dealing with codependency that stems out of my fears, false beliefs, negative thoughts, and my name is Tanya. Hey, everybody. So tonight is the fun Sanity lesson, and I know I picked this really great picture, and I don't know if that's sane or not. It might be a little insane. I'm not for sure. I mean, I feel like, what happens if it crashes or loses power or you can't control it? I don't know. I was kind of jealous, too. I didn't think of that already, to do that with my cats. Anyhow, I couldn't resist the picture. I had to figure out a way to stick it in there. So there you go. Because sanity can sometimes be the insane things we do, like maybe this, but really the insanity that we're talking about tonight is that definition of the things we do over and over, expecting a different result. It's the things that we hope if we keep doing it, if we persevere long enough, things will change or get better or just be fine. So it doesn't work. I think most of us here know that. That's why we're here. And as a matter of fact, last month when I taught the powerless lesson, I gave you 9 character defects that we may react out of when life throws us a curveball and feel powerless. And those character defects are another insanity cycle. Also, we can add to that our addictions and compulsive behaviors. And we got lots of ways to be messed up around here. Lots of things to work on for the rest of our lives. It's never going to end. But the thing we have to watch out for, and the biggest thing that our insanity cycles do to us, is they keep us in denial. They keep us from facing whatever it is we're not dealing with. And so it's important to learn to recognize our insanity cycles and deal with them when we do see them and understand or recognize them, because that's how we get out of denial and begin to face whatever it is we're avoiding, that we're not wanting to face. And the good news is we don't have to do this on our own. If we surrender them to God and invite him in to help us, he can help us not only face them, but replace them. And it's a process that I think most of us have been in CR for any amount of time. You know it doesn't happen overnight. But I have found, for me personally, and I believe for many of you, it is so well worth the effort and the time to invest to do it. So we're going to jump in first tonight by beginning going over our principle and step. And if you didn't get a handout, they're on the back table, so be sure to grab one if you didn't get one already. But we're going to begin with principle 2, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to him, and he has the power to help me recover. And it corresponds with the beatitude of Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And then step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And sadly enough, I have to admit that I've had to learn the hard way what can happen when we don't deal with our insanity cycles. And to add more misery to my pain was the fact that I was super stubborn and determined to get the outcome I wanted, but it didn't happen. And it was a good lesson, though, for me to learn. And I learned a lot from it. And I hope by sharing a little bit of this story with you tonight that I encourage you to not do a Tanya, okay? Don't be like me. Don't do my example. Hopefully this will help you not to do it, to avoid a lot of the pain and misery I went through as a result of my poor choices. But some of you have heard this story. About 13 years ago, I found myself stuck in an insanity cycle, and I was in it for 3 years. And I was doing everything I could to control, fix, and rescue my youngest daughter from her mental illness, to no avail. And I had spent those 3 years while she was in high school taking her to a psychiatrist, but she refused to take the meds or cooperate with anything the doctor asked her to do. But I kept taking her anyway. I was determined she was going to change. If I kept taking her, maybe the next visit she'll take the meds. Maybe the next visit she'll hear what the psychiatrist said and would do it. I was just determined it was going to happen. So I kept taking her. But after 3 years, her psychiatrist finally said to me one day, stop bringing her. She's like, until she's willing to cooperate, until she's willing to take her medication, I'm wasting my time, energy, and money. And that was when my walls of denial came crashing down. And I found myself actually then filled with a lot of toxic emotions. I was angry at her. I was angry at God. I was angry at the mental illness. I was furious that she wouldn't cooperate. And I was also very sad for her because I expected that she would, and she did miss out on a lot of life experiences because of her mental illness. And I also feared for her future. And I wondered if she would even live to have much of one. So I was out of control emotionally, and I was ready really to take a drink to numb it out. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the answer. And in June of 2010, which was right after the doctor had told me to stop bringing her in, God led me here to the CR program. And I honestly had no clue how CR was going to help me or how it was going to help me deal with this, but I knew everything else I did had failed. And there was nothing I could do in my own power that was going to fix her or help her or make her better. And the first thing that God showed me when I started coming to CR was how much I was attempting to play little g God with all of my fixing and controlling ways. I wasn't trusting him for my daughter, and I wasn't trusting him for her future. And so I learned a lot about my codependent behaviors over the last 10 years that I have been here in CR. And God has been helping me to face and replace a lot of them, which is a good thing, because this past December, I was going to be put to the test to see, did I really learn my lesson and have I really changed? But before I tell you about December, I got to back up into last year, because last year was already stressful enough. There was so many things happening between what was going on in our country and COVID and work and jobs and everything else. But also last year, I had to witness my daughter decline in her schizophrenia. It was the worst I've ever seen her whole life. Her delusions were out of control. Her paranoia was unbelievable. And I knew she was in a really, really bad place, and something bad was probably going to happen eventually. And in November, she got arrested twice in 1 month. And the first time she got arrested, a friend bailed her out. The second time she got arrested, nobody came running to her rescue to get her out. And now she was begging me and Dave to get her out, to bail her out. And this was when, in December, my codependency was going to be put to the test. I would discover here, have I really changed? Had I stopped? But in order for me to discover this and figure out what I needed to do, I decided I needed to stop. I needed to pray. I needed to ask God to help me not be codependent and to make choices that would help her without getting in God's way, in the way of God doing his work in her life. And he showed me two things that I could do. The first one, I wrote a letter to the judge, and I explained some of her mental health history, and I asked if she would please assign her a public defender that was used to and familiar with dealing with people with mental illnesses. And the judge did that. The second thing, which was much harder for me to do, was to be very honest and straightforward when speaking in truth in love to my daughter. I let her know that we would not be bailing her out. And I encouraged her to listen to and to cooperate with her public defender and her investigator and anyone else they deemed necessary to help her. And so this was huge for me, especially when you're codependent. When you have to say no to somebody, that can be really scary, because that's why a lot of us get stuck in our codependent behaviors, because we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, and we want approval. So what happens when we say no? What usually happens to the other person? They usually get mad, angry, and guilt us, shame us, or whatever. And so this was no different, but I have to tell you, loving people with saying yes is just the same as loving them when we have to say no. That both can equal love. No does not mean rejection. No does not mean I hate you or I don't like you. It just means I won't do what you want me to do for you. And that's okay. And thankfully, I was in a good place when I was able to do this, because she did not like our no. She got angry. She got upset. She didn't say some very nice things when we didn't do what she wanted, but I stuck to it. As a result, she ended up getting evaluated by a psychologist who deemed her mentally incompetent to stand trial. And I just found out last week that she's going to be sent to a mental hospital to get help and put on the right meds for her condition. And so I'm praying and hopeful that she will get to a better place and maybe even in her right mind. And I feel like I finally have hope for the first time for her in a very long time. And so I'm hoping I don't sound cold or callous about her, because it's not easy to talk about, and it's not easy to watch your children be in a really bad place. But I believe there is nothing more I could do because I believed if I bailed her out, then I would become responsible for her choices after that. If she fled, I would be on the hook. If she committed more crimes, it could have been crimes that could have hurt or harmed her more. And she would also end up back right where she is, ground zero, back in jail, starting all over again in this process. And I knew her delusions were so bad, I believed that was safer for her to be in jail than to be out somewhere else. So I believed God had led me to do the right things on her behalf. And the rest I was just going to have to trust him for. And I can honestly say I've been encouraged to see how God has worked out the details of her case. And I've learned that I am so much more happier when I'm not living out of my unhealthy, codependent choices. I can honestly say I feel saner and have a peace of mind when I was facing this crisis. So I want to encourage you tonight, if you are struggling with an insanity cycle, don't give up. You can still learn how to face them and replace them so you can work to maintain your sanity. But before we get into tonight's acronym, where we're going to talk about maintaining our sanity, we're going to address one of the very important keys, which is to help us face and deal with our insanity cycles, and that is plugging into God's power. We have to plug into his power in order to have success over our insanity cycles. In 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, "The Spirit that God has given us fills us with power, love, and self-control." If we have a personal relationship with Christ, then we have his Spirit within us. And if we have his Spirit within us, then we have the power we need to help us face and replace our insanity cycles. Then, in his love, we can tell others the truth of what we are willing or not willing to do. And then lastly, God's Spirit also helps us to have self-control, which we're going to need in order to maintain our sanity. We're going to need a lot of self-control to not go back and fall back into our insanity cycles. But thankfully, with God, all of this is possible. And it won't be easy, but the peace and serenity you're going to find is going to make this journey well worth it. So we're going to jump into our sanity acronym for tonight. The emphasis is going to be on maintaining sanity. I'm already assuming you know your insanity cycle or know the character defects that you're working on or that you struggle with. So I'm addressing you know what it is. You know what you should be doing. So how do you maintain doing the right thing? How do you maintain your sanity by continuing to do the things you need to do in order to maintain sanity and not falling into the spiral of your insanity cycles? Well, the first thing we need to do is recognize, okay, I thought, am I at a disco? All right, I guess not. Guess we're still here in CR, all right. Yeah, it's okay. You can see me, right? I can see, kind of see you. All right. Huh? Yes. Perfect. All right, so first we got to recognize that our journey to maintain our sanity is about pursuing steady growth. That's your first fill-in on your sheet. Steady growth. Not perfection is our goal. Our journey is a process, and no one's ever going to achieve perfection on this side of heaven anyway. Attempting to be perfect will only cause pain and frustration, especially as you fail. So learning how to focus on steady growth with a realistic perspective will help us to maintain our sanity as we navigate new problems that we get hit with. And if you mess up, don't beat yourself up for not having it down of what you need to do, because another problem will come up, and you will have another opportunity to respond differently in the future. So don't worry, you'll get more chances to try. And thankfully, we are not alone in our struggles here because God will help us. In Psalm 46:1, it says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." With God's help, he will help us to maintain our sanity if we focus on having steady growth, not perfection. And so from there, we're going to go to our next letter in our to maintaining sanity is A, which is accept the things you cannot change. OMG. I don't know about any of you, if any of you struggle with this, but I have gotten stuck so many times in making attempts over and over and over to change people or the circumstances because I was determined I was going to get the outcome I wanted, and I refused to believe it could happen any other way. Hence the story of 3 years of taking my daughter over and over to a psychiatrist, spending time, money, and energy when she could cooperate. So, or how about this guy with his head in the alligator's mouth? I mean, someone needs to tell him, that's not a good idea. And it's amazing the things we'll tell ourselves that we're in control of, but one day we're going to find out we're really not. And then we got to deal with the pain and the consequences of our choices. If we let it drag out like I did, we'll discover that our pain and misery just grows. And what happens to us when we are filled up with pain and misery? Most of us, not all of us, but most of us are going to become a big, anxious mess. But thankfully, because God knows us, he tells us what to do if that happens. In 1 Peter 5:7, he says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Wallowing in our pain and misery and anxiety that our insanity cycles lead us into doesn't have to be a permanent place to reside. We can give them to God. We can surrender whatever it is we cannot change and ask him what we should be doing. And when we're ready to accept that what we can't change, the misery and the pain and the anxiety will start to disappear as we realize we weren't in control anyway. The next letter to maintain our sanity is N for notice new hurts, notice new hangups, and notice any new habits and begin to take action. And the truth is, the longer you're in CR, the more layers God's going to peel back. And the more layers he peels back, the more God's going to show us the depth of our character defects. He's going to show us our new unhealthy thoughts, our new unhealthy reactions, and sometimes he even reveals to us other wounds that need to be addressed and healed. I mean, just look at some of these habits and hang-ups that are popping up on the screen here. I mean, just to name a few things that we could be doing, we all need help to break free from them. But in order to break free from these things, and this is just a small, super short list here, we got to see ourselves for who we truly are. We won't be able to work on replacing any insanity cycles if we don't really, truly address and confess to what we're doing and who we really are. And once we notice new hurts, habits, and hang-ups, the sooner we can begin to face them and replace them, because God is ready and willing to help us, because this was part of his plan from the very beginning. In Philippians 1:6, it says, being confident of this, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ. I think it's so cool that God says his plan is to continue his work in us until we go to be with Jesus. So when we're facing and replacing insanity cycles with healthier choices, the more we will find we're going to be able to also live out of the fruits of the Spirit. And I don't know about you, but I would much prefer to live out of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control, faithfulness, gentleness, than my pain and misery any day. But we got to be willing to give up our insanity cycles that keep us from facing those new hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Now, another way we maintain our sanity is to invite others to help us along the way. Sometimes we just need other people to help us not be stupid, okay? Just plain and simple. And when we ask others for help, they can help us stay the course. They can help us get back on track. But it's really humbling to reach out for help. But it can make such a huge difference in our journeys in here. I also have another example of why it's really important to reach out. Because sometimes we get it in our heads that we can take care of things ourselves. I'm a perfect example of that if you didn't catch the story at the beginning. But anyway, I got permission to share the story with you. But a while back, and this is before Jody and Alex came to our church and took over taking care of our IT stuff, we had what was called the PD incident with our old IT guy. And PD means Pastor Dave incident. So that was our nickname. We still talk about it today. And anybody who hasn't been over to the other building, my desk is right outside of Dave's office. So if his door is open, I can hear, what he's saying on the phone or whatever. And one day, I'm hearing our fearless leader have this conversation with somebody about his computer. And he was having issues and struggles and problems. And I'm kind of listening in. And I'm like, what is happening? So I walk in there and I see this big red box on his screen that says, you've been hacked. You need to call Microsoft. Call this number now. And guess who he's on the phone with? Microsoft, right? He called that number on the screen. He gave this guy access. He was already in our network. And I'm like, what's going on? What happened? Dave's like, yeah, my computer's being hacked, and this guy's from Microsoft. He's helping me. I'm like, how do you know this guy's from Microsoft? Because he's talking to me. He's helping me, and for a small fee, he's going to fix and get rid of the virus. And I'm like, we need to call our IT guy. And then I unplugged his computer from the network. And he agreed. You agreed. You did it. You hung up nicely with that man on the phone. And he called our IT guy. And that's when he discovered the truth that he was hacked into. But it was by the fake Microsoft guy. And so my poor trusting husband, this is one of the reasons why I love this guy so much, because he is so trusting of other people and always wanting to give the benefit of doubt to others, even if they're hackers. So anyway, the moral of the story is, don't let others hack into your life and cause mayhem. Reach out and ask for help from the right people. This is one way we keep on encouraging each other and keep on work on maintaining our sanity. In Hebrews 10:24, it says, let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. And sometimes we need others to encourage us to keep up the good work we're doing in here. Sometimes we need others to help us see our victories. Sometimes we need others to guide us before we make big mistakes. Sometimes we need people to challenge us if we're getting lazy, and so on. So don't allow others to hack into your life, mess you up, and cause you to run your your insanity cycles. Instead, reach out to the right people. Now, the next step we can take to maintain our sanity is T for try to keep short accounts. And the truth is, we're all sinful, broken, hurting people, and we are going to hurt the people we love. And they're going to hurt us. That's just a reality. And when it happens, because it will, God doesn't want us to hold on to that pain or hurt. He wants us to deal with it so we can keep short accounts. And it's hard to believe, but I know, don't faint or fall over when I tell you this, but I did have another insanity cycle. I feel like Rita, like I was almost perfect in many ways. But I did have another insanity cycle that I used to do years ago, and it was something really dumb, but I did it, and it was in the first couple years we were married, and if Dave hurt or upset me, I wouldn't tell him, and that was my reaction. That was my insanity cycle, the old silent treatment. And poor guy, when I was quiet, he ran to his insanity cycles, which was to go around and clean the house, do the laundry, offer me shoulder massages while watching Lifetime for Women movies, and take care of anything else he thought would make me happy and get me talking. But it didn't work. Nothing changed, except for we had a really clean house and my shoulders were relaxed. But we were still both quite miserable. And I'm thankful because we both realized we needed to go to counseling, and we both got the help we need to change our ways of communicating. And this has helped me over the years to help keep short accounts with him. Because I discovered when I was stuffing how I felt, I kept this mental list in my head that I was checking off all the times and everything he did that hurt me or upset me. But as I learned to express myself to him, work through it with him, I've been able to forgive and let go. And as a result, keep short account for over the 30 years we've been married. And I also know that God has never intended for us to harbor our toxic emotions, which is what builds up if we don't learn how to keep short accounts. It isn't healthy, and it's not how God asks us to live. In Ephesians 4:31 and 32, it says, get rid of, not like hang out with or temporarily or kind of, sort of. It says get rid of it. Get rid of bitterness, get rid of rage, anger, brawling, slander, every form of malice. That's a lot of toxic emotions right there. And he tells us what to do instead. Be kind, compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ forgave you. Being kind, compassionate, and forgiving is a solution. And if you're stuck in toxic emotions right now, do not beat yourself up over it. It just is something to work on. That's just something to face, something to deal with. And part of keeping short accounts is learning how to walk through the forgiveness process. And that's a topic we're going to cover in greater detail later in the year. And so, but that's part of the process that will help us learn how to maintain short accounts. Now, the last letter in our insanity cycle of what we need to maintain, to have sanity, is why for your higher power. Your higher power is on your side. We need to remember we are not alone. And not only do you have other people in this group sitting here with you who are working on themselves, but you also have the Spirit of a living God living in you. Greatest power ever that we need to help us. Our God, who created the universe and each and every one of you, is on our side. And we're not alone. And we don't have to let our fears, our insecurities, or our circumstances dictate our life any longer. And how do I know that God is there for us? Because he says in Isaiah 41:10, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Who else could ever make that kind of promise to us and keep it? Only our God. But we have to choose to remember he is with us. He will help us. He will give us the power and strength to face anything we have to. We don't have to lean on our insanity cycles to get by in life any longer. We can face them and replace them, so then we can just work on maintaining our sanity with God's help. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. So what I did was in your bulletin, I have some questions. If you're not sure what to share about tonight or what to or talk about when you go to share groups, you can answer those questions if you want. If you want to do them at home, you can do them at home to help you dig deeper on this topic of where you're at and how you're doing. But let's go ahead and stand up and say the Serenity Prayer so we can head out to share groups.